A chef by trade, Travis Morin has a passion for photography in between his restaurant jobs. When a friend called him yesterday to tell him that Kealia Pond had turned pink,
and I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I don't believe it. It can't be that pink. So at sunset, I was just driving by on my way out of Kihei, and I looked over and I was like, that does look very pink.
he parked his car and sent up a drone.
I thought, I was like, it kind of looked like the color of Pepto-Bismol. I think, part of the reason why it was so vibrant was it was the time of the day. There was less glare, there was less reflection.
The Pacific Whale Foundation says Kealia Pond used to be connected to the ocean, but not for the last few years. Add on the drought conditions West Maui is experiencing.
That has caused some algae and bacteria to bloom. Some species that are very salt tolerant and that thrive in a salty environment. The fresh water is evaporating, leaving behind a lot of salt. And so that's leaving it with this beautiful pink color. It seems that those type of algae, they have beta carotene pigment in them, which is like what gives carrots the color that they have. It's nothing man-made or toxic that we need to be concerned about.
So this is not Photoshop. It's not a prank, like someone dumped something into the water. This appears to be natural.
That's right. It's not a joke. It's real life. Nature is sometimes pretty amazing.
The pond is home to fish and birds who don't seem to be affected, and no large die-offs have been reported.
I mean, I would not recommend anyone go out there and taste it, but I'm sure it's extremely salty water right now.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says the Department of Health collected samples and sent them to UH for analysis. We'll follow up on what they learn.
The information in the video shows an incident in Beijing, China. Severe flooding has struck Beijing, China, causing widespread chaos and displacement of residents. Heavy rains have led to overflowing rivers and streets submerged in water, with rescue teams working tirelessly to assist those affected. Authorities are urging residents to stay safe and take necessary precautions as the city grapples with this natural disaster.
Well, scientists say seismic activity has decreased in southwest Iceland, where hundreds of people have had to leave their homes over fears over a volcanic eruption. More than 1,000 earthquakes have hit the area since midnight, but they've mostly been weaker than those over the last couple of days. But experts do stress a 15-kilometre-long river of magma running under the peninsula is still active and poses a threat to nearby towns. Earlier on, I spoke to volcano expert Dr. Evgenia Ilinskaya. She told me more about the significance of these moments.
I guess it's both unusual and not unusual. We know that this part of Iceland is very volcanically and seismically active. And we know that every 1,000 years or so we get a long period of eruptions in this particular area. And pretty much right on time. The last eruptions have finished about 800 years ago, and now we're just starting a new eruptive episode of fires, as they're called locally.
So officials are evacuating people. Talk us through how dangerous this is.
People were evacuated around midnight on Friday night when there were geophysical data that showed escalation of magma intruding under the ground. So that's still the case. The likelihood of eruption is still considered very, very likely. So people are staying elsewhere at the moment, about 4,000 people.
Iceland's Civil Protection Agency has talked about this magma tunnel currently forming underneath certain towns. Can you talk about that? Tell us what that is.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, magma tunnel has, I think, been Google translated from Icelandic. The word that is used in English for this phenomenon is a dike, magma dike. So it's a vertical column of magma that comes from quite deep and can reach all the way to the surface. From geophysical measurements, both on the ground and from satellites, we could see that it was becoming very, very large and that it was inflating very, very rapidly. And this suggested that we could be going into a very large eruption. Luckily, over the last 12 hours or so, this inflation has slowed down. So now the worst case scenario of a very large eruption is considered less likely, but the possibility of a small eruption is still very, very high.
The worst flooding to hit Somalia in decades has killed 29 people and forced more than 300,000 to flee their homes. That's according to the National Disaster Management Agency on Wednesday. It follows heavy rains that have wreaked havoc in towns across East Africa. Authorities have scrambled to rescue thousands of stranded people from the floodwater, which comes on the heels of the region's worst drought in 40 years. And the Somali Disaster Management Agency said both the death toll and numbers of people displaced are likely to rise further, due to the sheer volume of people trapped by floodwater. The United Nations said at least 2,500 have been cut off in Luke Town, where the Juba River burst its banks. Floods in neighbouring Kenya have killed at least 15 people, and in Uganda a bridge has been submerged.